Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. We have a really fun review for you from a new brand I recently found out about, and I'm going to pronounce it the way I think it should be pronounced, which is as fancy as possible. So I will say this brand is AGELOCER, and it's a Chinese micro brand established back in 2013. They actually have already won a few international design awards, showing that they're pretty serious about combining bold designs and quality craftsmanship at an accessible price point. In terms of the type of watch, I would consider this a wild card watch. Some key common characteristics and design, which you're looking for something within this genre. Of course, it's going to be that eccentric and sometimes over-the-top styling for a standout or statement piece on the wrist that is equal parts conversation piece as it is timepiece. This is part of their sports series, and it's a mechanical tourbillon, and this is in the silver and black configuration in terms of the colorway. For those of you that don't know, a tourbillon is a high-end mechanical watch complication typically reserved for high-end luxury, designed to improve timekeeping accuracy by counteracting the effects of gravity on the movement of the watch. It consists of a rotating cage that holds the balance wheel and escapement, which rotates constantly to average out the effects of gravity in all positions. Now, that is something that was actually kind of an older technology that was a little bit more relevant in terms of pocket watches, because of course positional variance is a lot different when you have it on the wrist, because it's only going to lay so many different ways. But what is different about this that I found is one that I like the look of it. This is something that I actually caught my eye. I really like the skeletonization that's done, the twin barrel design. It's all actually very, very sharp. Also, they offer a 2-year warranty and a 90-day full return window. So you can actually get your money back within those first 90 days, which I was very surprised by, especially considering that these are, manufactured out of China. So that to me shows that they are very confident within their product. Another sign of their confidence within their product is the price point. It is set for $12.50 direct from the brand, and there are typically various discounts available. I think when I clicked on it, there was already like a $50 off discount, and I think there's like a 20% off discount if you sign up for whatever newsletters or anything like that. Definitely dig in. And I think that's actually kind of smart, because I've seen a lot of, super ultra cheap, I shouldn't say ultra, still $500 for Chinese tourbillons, and none of them really caught my eye. This one kind of being in an elevated position above those, and whether it be for marketing purposes or more than that substantially, I think it is one of the reasons that it did kind of stop me in my tracks. So with that said, with that long intro, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so as you can see, really a handsome piece here. There's so many details. So let me actually give you a little extra light source here, so it's not just going to reflect off that purely, black camera lens. Check out the finish work on here. It is honestly extremely impressive, and it should be at this price point of $1,000, slightly above $12.50, guys, if you're going to pay full price. This has a 42 millimeter diameter, a 10 millimeter height, and another thing that the light really helps is look at that brushing. Not gonna lie, that is a high level of brush there. That is a fine luxury like brush that you don't often see. A lot of times it's more like a brush that's been kind of dragged across. This definitely is more brush that was done on a wheel. So very impressive. And then also you get those very sharp, high polished bevels there across the tops of the lugs. 10 millimeter thickness, like I mentioned, which is actually quite thin, although the side slab kind of setup doesn't necessarily do it any favors into your eye visually thinking the watch is thinner than it is, but it is quite a thin watch. 49 millimeters lug to lug, and then this is made out of 316L stainless steel, brushed and polished, and it does have, of course, a nice sapphire, I believe 2 sapphires, one on each side there, and this thing is very, very impressive. Let's actually turn that off. Take a look at the back side too. Get a look with a little bit more mystery, and then pop that. Ooh, check out the finish there. You can see there's just a little bit transcribed. This thing is pretty impressive. So why did I kind of take an extra beat for this watch while other skeletonized watches and whatnot, and actually I think this might be, well, this is the first tourbillon that I've actually kind of, I think, bit, right? Like they got a bite from me. It evoked a response. And this one is with its, almost completely uncaged design. It is a flying tourbillon. So there's less anchor points there. There's only one. It was really impressive. I love the amount of kind of hollowness. You can see there's a lot of view from through that crystal. You can see my hand there, flesh tone. Then you get to the wood. That is impressive. If I can get the camera. Ooh. So, yeah, this one is purely based on the aesthetics, and then of course the price point. It really interested in me. I wanted to see if if it lived up to that. And I will say, when you get into, let's say, this fixed bezel there with the flat vertical brushing, it looks good. It has that high polished bevel as well. The push-pull crown is signed, and it even has some decoration basically where they spell out the name, which is a little niche, but it's eccentric, and this is a very eccentric watch. This is not a Rolex Submariner alternative, right? This is not a vanilla go anywhere, do anything type of watch. This is definitely a watch that you wear with a certain level of purpose. You want to wear this because it's fun and it's visually is attracting your eye and even your ear. So you can actually hear because there's minimal dampening between two crystals, mostly crystal there. So what I'll do is I'm going to move the movement a little bit over here to the microphone. If maybe you can hear it, we'll see. Well, hopefully some of that got picked up because it is pretty audible. Some of you might think it's very loud, but you can hear the beat ticking away there. It is 4 hertz in terms of the beat rate, which is impressive. Oh yeah, also the crown is a push-pull crown, not screw down. I wouldn't think there would be any need. Also, it's a manual wind. You can see there's no rotor or anything like that to be seen. This is based, from what I can tell from doing a little research, looks like it's based off the PTS 3481D movement, which typically is in a little bit more of a tonneau shape, but this one looks like they've basically kind of gutted a couple of those pieces to make it, a little bit more open, and then, perfect to fit this round shape. Also, an extended power reserve. This one is advertised at 80 hours of power reserve versus that PTS movement, which is advertised at 72 hours. So that's pretty darn good. Just from a regular standpoint, I mean, if you were to put this type of movement and you couldn't see it and it wasn't skeletonized, and all this stuff, or tourbillon, a manual wound movement with 80 hours of power reserve is actually pretty nice by today's standards. In terms of the dial, guys, we'll go ahead and flip this light back on again here. So the dial itself, I mean, there is no dial really, right? It's just that sloped chapter ring that does have applied indices, so that's where your lume is going to be, just like on the skeletonized hands, which are multi-finished. There you do have a polished flanks there on those with a brushed center. And then, of course, the dial, again, no dial, it's fully skeletonized, so those are all just parts of the movement. And then the lume on the hands is blue, while the lume on the indices are green. So you're going to get a little bit of contrast there. And man, is that tourbillon just really mesmerizing. Another thing, a little detail that I really like, is that if you look here at the 6 o'clock, there's a little channel that's machined out. And my first thought was, okay, what's that for? But if you actually look, as this comes around here, you can see the gear train. It's actually going to, if it wasn't there, it would have hit. So it basically has a little channel so that it can sink through. And for me, that's just a little sign that, hey, there was extra thought that went into this, right? They could have just made it big enough to where everything cleared, but instead they made that little channel, tightened things up, and I think anyway, made a really fun looking movement. And even on the backside, guys, of course, I think that their logo, it's a little bit Patek-ish, right? Oh, another thing, look how nice this buckle is, guys. This is a 22 millimeter lug on here with a strap that tapers down to about 20 millimeters. Nice mill signed buckle. Again, it has that nice polishing there, which is quite nice, that hairline polish. But I will say the edges are a bit sharp at certain points. Same goes for the under portion of the watch. Not sharp like in a dangerous way, but at least to the touch a bit. You might feel it in terms of comfort wise, feeling a little bit harsh. So that's the one part of it in terms of emulating that kind of luxury experience, where I think that they could do a little bit better. Like they could break some of these edges, especially on the underside, a little bit more. I don't mind the sharper edges here on the beveling and whatnot, because it looks fantastic, and really you're not going to be running your fingers up and down that. But this is going to be sitting on the back of your wrist, so it would be nice to have that to be a little bit smoother. And then of course, just completely open window there. And again, in today's world, this is just an absolute ambitious move on its own, right? Because the amount of dust, any type of lubrication that could easily get on the crystal and be a huge eyesore, and you're not seeing any of that here. This thing is just really well QC'd, well executed. I'm not saying this is hot horology in terms of the finish, but this is actually well finished. It's not like they did printed on perlage or anything like that. You can see that's genuine brushing with beveled edges across those skeletonized bridges. So for me, they just do a little bit extra, and those little hallmarks of quality are there for me. So it makes me believe a little bit more in this product, right? And then, of course, the price point. Some of you are probably not over that, thinking I would never pay that much. I mean, it is what it is. If somebody offered you a Lamborghini and they told you they would sell it to you for $50, you'd ask, what's wrong with the Lamborghini, right? So I think there's some level of that thought process here, where if they made this so cheap, honestly, I don't think people would maybe take it as seriously as it deserves, just based off of the level of craftsmanship that I've been able to kind of see within this so far. So with all that, I didn't mention yet, 5-bar water resistance, which is about 50 meters. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that the crown is pushed in. But you can, I'll do a little winding demo here. You can see that barrel. You can see the tension getting a little tighter there. And then that secondary one slowly, at a much slower rate, catching, also getting a little bit more wound, but the main barrel is definitely taking the majority of that wind there. So very, very cool. But with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this 42 millimeter diameter watch wears actually pretty well. And the openness of the dial, some of that, of course, is attributed to the diameter of the watch itself. So definitely nice there. Of course, if I do get it up close to the lens, you're going to get a lot of lens distortion. It's going to appear quite a bit larger, unfortunately. So what I'll do is I'll keep my wrist down low, and I'll just bring in the shot to make it a little tighter here, so you guys can get, still a detailed shot, but just a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may sit on your own wrist. I do have a larger wrist at 7.5 inches. I'm down to the third hole here. This fluoro, let me make sure I pronounce this correctly. This fluoro rubber strap is actually quite smooth and extremely pliable, and it has kind of this asymmetric design here. You can see there, which I think goes with kind of the design. Again, it's those little things that I did find quite impressive. My wife was like, wow, that's a really nice looking watch. Again, she's not a huge watch buff, and I think it probably would be the same story if I wore this a bunch, outdoors, which I think I will. I have to say that I'm going to admit it. I bought another strap for this because I'm actually wanting to wear it. Not that this strap is bad. It's just a bit small, for my wrist. So I actually did order another strap. So I will do another follow-up video where I think anyway, the strap choice is going to really, take this up a notch as well. So you can see, man, that's a good looking watch. That's it. I mean, I find this to be quite attractive. I will say, because of course I do wear my watches on my right wrist because I write with my left hand. That crown, does sit a little bit on the back of my wrist there. You can see on my arm. If I had it on my other wrist, basically, then it might be coming into the back of my hand. But I will say that, after extended wear, you will probably notice a little divot there. And that's another reason why I'm going to be swapping out the strap so I can actually wear this a little bit looser. Have a little bit more micro adjust in terms of my options there. But this is an extremely handsome piece, and it even has Lume. So what we're going to do next is get this off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, there's Lume. Yes, it's not a huge amount. This isn't a dive watch, but hey, you can tell the time, so that is always nice. And if I did want to give it a little extra boost by hitting it with some black light here, another cool thing that I noticed is that a couple of those rubies really glow. Check that out. I thought that was really interesting. So one thing, of course, I always like to work in to my Lume shots is going to be a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, maybe hanging out underneath the shade of a tree, or just spending some time in your favorite automobile. So it's really nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to maybe even include some harsh lighting that could typically expose some level of factory defect. You can see there, though, that you're just going to see that vertical brush, which is pretty well done. Not quite as nice as the sides of the case there with the brushing, or the buckle, which was actually pretty impressive, although a tad sharp. But I do like, let's see if I can get it. Check that out. Look at the brush work on the skeletonized bridges there. That is really, really impressive. Some of you are like, legibility. Well, yeah. Where are the hands? Yeah, it's a little tough. I don't think there was really any legibility issues in full lighting, but of course in mixed lighting, the nice thing is you do have the Lume to help differentiate. So smart on the brand for considering that, because I think an unlumed version would have been a bit more problematic in terms of legibility. Even here now, looking at it, I of course know to look for the Lume there, but maybe you don't. So especially when the bridges can be in certain angles and shapes, like right now they're kind of in parallel with each other, and that's that secondary mainspring barrel. So I mean, I guess if you can take your eyes off of the tourbillon that's just rotating there, just looking gorgeous. So closing thoughts, guys. This does wear nice and flat, very low slung on the wrist. The larger case does allow for that dial opening to really breathe. It can be a bit sharp to the touch in certain points, and a touch loud with minimal sound dampening in terms of, your user experience. I did want to mention that, this isn't some perfect watch by any means, but it is really quirky, and I don't know, there's something about it that I really enjoy. And in terms of model variants, definitely check the site links for options and availability. There were basically, it's the same watch with, basically you get a little variation, I believe, on the bridge color and the chapter ring. So that's how you kind of add your pops of color there. And then I think there's also like a gold case, which actually looks pretty cool too. Gold plated, of course. Now, in terms of comparable models, there's actually kind of a mixed bag of affordable Chinese manufactured tourbillons, many of which are only concerned with packing this most complicated type of movement into the cheapest package possible. It's just street creds first, right? There's a lot of tourbillons, especially, specifically Chinese made tourbillons, where they just want to be able to, it's a race to the bottom. They want to sell you the cheapest tourbillon on the market. And hey, good on them. None of them design wise really spoke to me. A lot of them try to kind of emulate an older look, which doesn't really do a lot for me because there are still a lot of mainstream brands that are doing really great vintage inspired reissues and whatnot. So I don't really look to that space for something that is going to be vintage inspired or dressy for that matter, just due to the size of these movements. Now, one thing that I feel like really makes this very different is that it really makes an effort to provide that premium like experience with its bold design and kind of higher level of quality finishing. Now, again, this isn't, some luxury bargain in terms of the finishing, but it is really well done. It does the complex things. It does have complex finishing. They didn't go full satin. They didn't go bead blasted. They didn't go, full high polish. There's a mixture, and the transitions have nice, sharp transitions, which are those hallmarks again of quality. I see those little things that they did to kind of re-engineer the layout of this movement to make it fit the space better and to visually kind of tie things in, whether it be on the strap with the asymmetric pattern on there, or some of the choice to use skeletonized hands that really kind of blend but still contrast. But then, hey, let's also put a brushed highlight on there to make sure these don't get lost. So they're doing things a little bit more complex and less basic. Even the decoration on the crown where they spelled out the name of the brand, it's kind of niche and a bit corny maybe to some, but again, that's not easy. They're doing things to make this more complex and to make it interesting. So there is a lot of visual interest. There's a lot to look at here. So yeah, I thought that was different. And for me, guys, the bottom line, this is a wild card watch actually worth spending some wrist time with. So much so that, again, I purchased a new strap to wear this with to take it up another notch. So I'm looking forward to sharing that strap pairing with you guys here in the future. So definitely keep an eye out. I know for some of you, you're finding this video because you're just all about tourbillons and you probably didn't care much for what I had to say. But some of you also are maybe here because you're just interested in skeletonized watches, and some of you might be interested in just modern watches. The whole market is so flooded with vintage inspired pieces. There's definitely still a lot of real estate for larger, angular, modern watches. While a lot of the market is going downsized and vintage, seeing something like this, to me, it just stands out. And then, of course, there's also the juxtaposition of the fact that this is a tourbillon, which is a really old, kind of hot horology complication, now brought to you, in something that is actually quite modern looking and very different. And if this was a different brand, maybe a micro brand that was quite well known for sports watches, my goodness, I think they could charge a couple of thousand for this. A couple of the micro brands that I really enjoy that have built a little bit more of that kind of brand equity within that micro brand enthusiast space and just the general watch enthusiast space. They could do something. When you think about a brand like AGELOCER, right? They've been able to do like a $10,000 tourbillon because we buy so many of their $500 watches, right? You build a certain level of trust and admiration. So, I mean, again, if this was released by, another brand that is, more beloved, just within the space, like Notice, or, one of any of the other really great, Raven, right? So many cool, fun brands that are out there. If they released something like this, yeah, I think they could call it a Halo watch and charge a couple of grand for it. Here, you're going to be able to buy this for right about $1,000, and 1,200 or less, and that's pretty cool. And they specialize in tourbillons. They have a couple on their site. So yeah, and then all their movements are quite unique as well, in terms of the choices. There's not a lot of just kind of basic clone movements that they're using. They actually are using some unique stuff that is not cheap. I try to actually look up this movement or a variation of it to see how much it would cost. It was like $500 just for the movement. So, I mean, that's a good amount, especially when you think that you can get, a nice Seiko or Miyota movement for under 100 or around 100. Even ETA movements are going to be closer to, last time I checked, ETAs and Solitas, STPs, those can be had, in the couple hundred, $200. So this is not cheap. But it is affordable and it is attainable. Man, I've been just rambling. I don't know. This watch evoked quite a ramble out of me. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.